Foreign Secretary is with us in the studio now. Hello to you, Foreign Secretary. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. To the outside world, it appears what's going on in Kabul is absolute chaos. What's your understanding?
Well, I got a situation update this morning. The position at the airport is stabilising. There's been a surge of US and UK troops. We've got 600 extra personnel there. It's critically important, not just for the stability on the ground for Afghans, but critically for our evacuation effort. We've made real progress. We had 150 British nationals come out on Sunday. Over the last week, we've also had 289 of those Afghan nationals who have served the UK so loyally in Afghanistan, and we expect over the next 24 hours to have 350 more both British nationals and Afghan nationals who've worked for us coming out. So the situation is stabilising, but obviously we're monitoring it very carefully.
Ben Wallace told me yesterday and again last Friday that we needed something like 1,500 people a day to come out.
Well, it depends if you're talking about the ARAP programme or nationals. We've had...
It doesn't matter, does it? It's chaos, though. We need to get them out.
Well, but actually, I think getting our British nationals out, of course, there's something like 2,000, the figure is changing all the time, who have contacted us. So that's a much smaller figure. In terms of ARAP, yes, we want to get all of those out as well. ARAP, of course, is those, whether it's translators or other Afghans who have loyally served the UK. So we're doing everything we can, but obviously it depends on the security situation on the ground. That's why we're putting in 600 of our own personnel. I spoke to Tony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, yesterday. They're upping every hour and every day the security that they need, including crowd control to deal with the surge of Afghans
happened yesterday?
who are seeking to get out, given the Taliban takeover.
What happened yesterday?
Well, I think given the Taliban takeover, given the nervousness, the fear on the ground, you've seen a lot of people effectively heading for the door. And we've got to make sure that we can stabilise the situation. And I think ultimately British people would expect us, and I'm sure the American public the same, to prioritise our nationals, including dual nationals in Afghanistan, but also those who have so loyally served us. That's what we're doing.
OK. A large number of thugs is what I read in this morning's newspapers that are on their way to Kabul. This uneasy peace that is in place at the moment is very soon going to be shattered. What's your intelligence on that?
Well, we don't talk about intelligence, as you know.
You must be concerned about it, though.
Well, there are reports all the time. The situation is very fluid. The Taliban have exerted control far more rapidly than we expect. There will be dissenting rebel voices and actions. What we want to see at the moment is two things. One, the evacuation conducted as stably as possible. We've had assurances at the higher level from the Taliban publicly through the Taliban Political Commission in Doha and through third parties. I spoke to the Qatari Foreign Minister and the Pakistani Foreign Minister. They've made all sorts of commitments in the Doha Agreement, which dates back to 2020. We expect to hold them to account to that. And secondly, then there is the medium-term strategy, which must mean making sure that Afghanistan can't be used by terrorist groups to attack neighbours or the West again, trying to provide the humanitarian relief that the people in Afghanistan need, given the hugely unstable situation you've described. That's going to be very challenging. We won't obviously be giving aid directly to the Taliban. We do want to provide humanitarian relief to the civilian population. And I think there's a much broader question about stabilising that region and how we engage with those countries who are going to be very difficult, but will have a stake in trying to stabilise the situation, from Pakistan, India to China, all with very different views. We've got to show the international leadership to try and bring some stability and a positive track forward.
More than that, Ken McCallum, the head of MI5, is very worried about UK-based groups which have been radicalised that could cause problems here in the UK. How worried are you about that?
Well, look, we listened to Ken and the Home Secretary and the law enforcement operations here. We track that very, very carefully. Of course, what happens in the Middle East, we know, can have a ricochet effect back in the UK. But what I do know is that Ken and the MI5 team and all of our law enforcement are absolutely red hot on making sure that we protect British nationals and the UK. That's our #1 priority.
Is he right to be worried? Ben Wallace says he is.
I think it's always right that the head of MI5 is alert and sensitive to all changes abroad that will have a security implication in the UK.
OK. I want to go back to the people that are coming out of Afghanistan. I've been speaking to a lot of your colleagues. They're absolutely furious that they say about 20,000 Afghan nationals need to return to the UK because they are either people that work for us directly or their families who are in extreme danger if they stay there.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of number that you're looking at?
Well, the total numbers are being processed by through the ARAP scheme. We've got 3,300 Afghan nationals and their families out to date. I think we're the highest number proportionately of all of our allies. So I think it's been very difficult, but we've made good progress. We want to now stabilise that airport and get as many of them out as we possibly can.
Well, how many are
but look,
do you recognise that number?
Well, I'm not sure about the number exactly, but look, they're clearly in the thousands because we've got 3,300 out already. We want to get as many of them as we physically can out. But of course, it depends on the stability of the situation on the ground, which is why we come back to the point that you mentioned earlier, rightly. The stability at the airport is absolutely key. And I've been working very closely with Ben Wallace and the Home Secretary to make sure we can do everything we can, give ourselves the capacity every day to get as many out as quickly as we can, given the window of opportunity for that.
Do you agree with your Defence Secretary that sadly some people will be left behind?
I think there's always a risk of that. What I'm focused on is just doing everything physically possible to get British nationals out, to get as many of those who've loyally served us out, and also to think about how we then move forward with an international strategy which can stabilise the situation for the people of Afghanistan.
Under what timescale are you hoping to be able to do that?
I think it's difficult to say because the situation is so fluid. We were all caught by surprise by the speed and pace and scale of the Taliban takeover. The Americans have talked about the end of August, but ultimately we need to get people out as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, and it will depend on the security situation on the ground. But I come back to the point, I do think, and having spoken to Tony Blinken, my opposite number yesterday, do think that the airport is more stable today than it was yesterday, and we need to make sure that we consolidate that in the days ahead.
OK. Given that you said that not just you, but many were taken by surprise, not least the Americans as well, how disappointed are you that our military top brass didn't know that this was coming?
Well, it's not just a question, by the way, of the military. We have an assessment process. We've looked at it for... since I become Foreign Secretary, I've been in the NSC's National Security Council meetings. We've monitored this very carefully. But the truth is, across the world, people were caught by surprise. I haven't spoken to an international interlocutor, including countries in the region, over the last week, who hasn't been surprised. But the reality is...
to predict better after 20 years in the country.
Well, yeah, but we saw a very swift change in the dynamics. And of course, this has been part and parcel of the withdrawal of Western troops. But it's also been the way and the approach of the Taliban. And of course, it's been a test for the Afghan security forces. All of those factors have been very fluid. But no one saw this coming. Of course, we would have taken action if we had.
But I get that. My question is, shouldn't we have?
I think it's easy to say that with the benefit of hindsight, but the truth is you're always measuring a very fluid constellation matrix, if you like, of risk factors, and that's the reality.
Is the Taliban an organisation that you can do business with?
Ordinarily, you'd say no. They don't share our standards of human rights. They don't
that doesn't stop us dealing with China.
They don't treat women the way that
doesn't stop
we
us
want.
dealing with China.
Well, I think we're going to have to be pragmatic, as the UK policy has always been. We've engaged through the political commission of the Taliban in Doha. It's important we engage through third parties. That's why I spoke to my Qatari foreign minister. We're going to need to be able to send clear messages. And our message is going to be this: Afghanistan must never be used to launch terrorist attacks against the West. We've had 20 years of success in that regard. We've had a range of other successes. We've seen 10 million more children in education that never saw a school book since 2001. Many of those young girls. We've cleared 8 million landmines. So we have secured gains in that 20 years. Clearly, they're now at risk. Yeah. What we want to do is everything we can through the full range of diplomatic, economic sanction measures to make sure we can use as much leverage as we conceivably have, and I'm realistic about that, to try and moderate and exercise some form of positive influence around the regime ahead. And of course, there is still, and it may be a low chance of this, still these talks that are going on through the Taliban's political political commission, which is based in Doha, to try and make sure that there's a transitional government, which isn't just purely Taliban. Now, I think we need to be realistic.
You can't trust the Taliban, surely.
You can't, but at least as long as there's a process that they're engaged in, I think we need to test it.
They're a ragtag bunch of thugs.
Look, I'm not going to dissent from that view, but they are now in power, and we now need to deal with that reality. And all I'm just saying is, we don't have to be optimistic about it. As long as there is an engagement via that process, we want to test whether there is scope to moderate the kind of regime that we will now see in place.
Do we rule out returning to Afghanistan in some numbers at some stage in the future?
Look, I can't take a crystal ball out and...
Not asking you to. I'm saying, are you going to rule that out? Or
we're clearly...
That seems what Biden's done.
We're clearly withdrawing. We said when we went into Afghanistan, NATO said we'd go in together, we adapted together, and we'd leave together. So we now need to deal with that reality.
How sorry are you that you didn't return from your holiday earlier?
Okay, as I said, everyone was caught off guard by the pace scale of the Taliban takeover. The reality is, as a foreign secretary, all foreign secretaries are in this position when we're abroad, whether it's for travel, for work or for holiday, we're there able to respond to events. So I was engaged in Cobra, talking to foreign counterparts, directly speaking to the head of our team here in London. I was doing that on an hour-by-hour basis, and of course I left as soon as the situation deteriorated and demanded it.
Understood. But you and the Prime Minister, I mean, you're the de facto Deputy Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, both of you, on holiday at the same time while Afghanistan was going to hell in a handcart. Was that a dereliction of duty?
No, I don't think that's the right description. Look, the reality is...
How would you describe it?
Well, look, we've been monitoring the situation in Afghanistan since the 2020 Doha Agreement very carefully. It's been very fluid. From my point of view, at any point in time, I will have 8 to 10 simmering issues that can bubble up. And we always...
But not like this.
Yes, I'm afraid, Kay, it may not always be in the media eye, but actually situations where we have to keep a very close eye. I always have to be...
Looking at one of the biggest airlifts since the Second World War.
Well, but we didn't predict that we would be doing this on this scale because of the Taliban takeover. But look, in retrospect, of course, I wouldn't have gone on holiday if I'd have known that being the case. Equally, after 18 months and 2 years of a very gruelling, demanding schedule, I think it's right that people in those positions try and take some leave, but we're always ready, I'm always ready to come back. And of course, the key point that I was making is, even when I was away, frankly, I wouldn't have gone away if I'd have known that. I was constantly handling and managing meetings, talking to foreign counterparts,
Understood.
and because of technology, of course, able to engage in every one of the Cobra meetings.
I was speaking to a former soldier yesterday who lost both of his legs in Afghanistan. He said he picked up bits of his mate on the road in Afghanistan. He says that it was all for nothing.
My heart goes out to anyone that has served their country and suffered those kind of losses and seen what he will have seen. He has served his country loyally, and I think he should be proud of what he's achieved. As I mentioned before, we were there 20 years. We have, in that time, not seen a terrorist group attack the West from Afghanistan. We have seen...
I know, but what's going to happen
Hold on.
next?
But it wasn't all for nothing. 10 million children in education, many of them girls. 8 million landmines cleared. We did that with our partners. Just so you know, for mothers, the maternal fatality rate, so the number of mothers that lost their life in childbirth or in pregnancy, down by almost a half.
But what now?
So we achieved those things, but now the question is, with the Taliban in place, and what are the levers we've got to moderate what comes next,
What are they?
and to make sure that the gains aren't lost?
What do you think?
So first, my answer to him would be his service was not in vain, but we've got a hell of a challenge now. We will use all the levers that we've got, whether it's economic tools, sanctions, the diplomatic leverage. I think what's going to be important in the terms of the diplomacy is working with all the countries in the region as well as the traditional partners. India will matter. China and Russia will matter. Difficult interlocutors for us. Pakistan will matter. Sure. All of those have got to, with us, work to provide some stability. And we've started that in the Security Council. We use our G7 presidency. We'll use the UN General Assembly coming up in September. I think we need a contact group of those regional and key partners. And I think we need to see some international leadership, and we'll be working very closely with the UN and those partners to achieve that.